All right, we're back. Security Sundays, as promised. If you missed our live on Saturday, we announced some new shows. Sunday. D don't like the name Programming Monday, but it is what it is. Tuesdays, we are doing Tech Tip Tuesdays, Wednesdays. Of course, is our meetup Thursdays, recap over what we went over in the meetup. So recap Thursdays. Fridays is Foolish Finance Fridays. And Saturday we do our lives, right? So here we are, Security Sunday. So what's so important about security? Everything from the physical security to your username and password, your PII, your personal information, to cloud security, to security of your operating system, security even of your laptop, security of your network. So security comes in many facets, from application security to even what we call supply chain security, like the code. Where does it come from? We saw the issue with SolarWinds. They're still filtering that out and having issues and remnants of that and so forth. So today I want to just give like a brief. I want to do a brief overview, and then we're gonna get into a little. I don't want to say a deep dive. We're just gonna talk about some security things, right? So first thing up, we have our our Red Hat. Well, yeah, Red Hat. Let's not go Red Hat. Let's do this. CVEs. So I don't know if people are familiar with CVEs or not, but CVEs are where we go to find like issues with or vulnerabilities with operating systems and so forth, right? So here, if you go to CVE MITRE MITRE.org, you'll find the latest CVEs. So here you can search a list of CVEs. You can go get the latest CVE news. They also have a podcast, a blog. You can follow them on Twitter. But let's go down here and look at the latest news. So let's go to news, and I'll go back to that page. But let's make this a little bigger so you can see it on your screen there. So you can see here, this is a new site form. It's beta, but now available CVE list downloads in JSON format. They have Life Ray added a CVE. Peter Eller or Red Hat joins the CVE board. And then minutes from their teleconference they had on March the 1st. Just a slew of information. Microsoft Journey adopting CVE service, right? So just different information that they have out here for CVEs. Now let's go back over here and we do a search on the CVE list. Right. So if you had a CVE ID or a record, you could type that in here. I have Red Hats up right now, right? And I have their advisory right here for all their products. So if I went over here to Red Hat CVE list, and I'm just gonna cut and paste this, right? Let me get that highlighted here. I don't want to highlight for me. Hold on, let me click on it and then highlight that. And if we come back over here, we should be able to type this in and then submit. And there it goes right there. And now I can just click here and it gives me a little bit more information about that CVE, right? Learn more about the National Vulnerability Database. But that CVE I typed in, this is Red Hat's website. I'm going to go back over to this right here. I have it. I pulled up Red Hat's website on their security updates, and they have a Red Hat CVE database list, and they give you security advisories for all their stuff, right? All their products, and you can sort by critical, important, and so forth. I just left it on all, and then if I want to get the CVE, I go to the CVE database and I grab it, and I came back over here and I put that into here. And so it's mod auth open IDC is an authentication authorization module for Apache 2 2.x, right? And they give you a little bit more information, and they give references, and they also give like where it says references are provided for the convenience of the reader to help distinguish between vulnerabilities, right? They give you the reference there. It's like GitHub assigning security advisories and so forth, and what phase is in, and whatever. But if we go back over here to Red Hat and we look at this, it tells you it's a moderate. It has moderate impact. So normally, what you have when you are doing security updates and so forth, most people want to take care of the criticals. You want to take care of the important ones, and then the moderates and the lows come afterwards. And you just want to take care of the criticals and important ones fairly quickly, right? So here you can go by publish date. Let me go back to this. You can see February the 19th was one for 2023, and then so forth and so on. That's on the critical. If we went over here to important, we have one for x.org. You have one from the Mozilla. You have one for remote filter and so forth. And you can take these CVE IDs and plug them into the CVE website here and get that information. All right. So that's I showed you the CVE database. We understand why we have a good idea right now why this is important, but we also have an idea of how CVEs are no, what's the word I'm looking for? Are not moderate, or I guess on a scale of 1 to 5, right? What's important, what's not important, so forth and so on, right? And then here they have security labs. This is on Red Hat site. This is strictly for Red Hat and Linux, and they show you like, hey, this CVE here, the shell shock, the SSL CVE, they walk you through how to, if you go here, more info, they walk you through what it was about, what it affected, instructions for the download page is like to check to see if your system has that issue, right? All right. Next one up is Kubernetes. So there's a list out there for Kubernetes as well too. You find that on the CVE website. But I wanted to give you the Kubernetes cheat sheet, right? So this is the Kubernetes security cheat sheet where you can walk through and one understand what the different components are, what are the different node components are, right? And then understand how to secure the hosts, the components, security while you're building, security when you deploy Kubernetes and deploy applications, and then runtime once the application is deployed. How do you secure the application and the cluster when it's deployed? So this is just a little cheat sheet that you can use. There are plenty of books out there for Kubernetes security. So if you want Kubernetes security and then books, you'll see Palo Alto has a guide. They have a guide, but here's one right here from 2021. Kubernetes and security and observability, hacking Kubernetes, GitOps and Kubernetes, learn Kubernetes security, container security, Kubernetes in production, secrets management. Just a brief overview of books. These books right here you can get on O'Reilly or at packet.com. You can get those there, right? And so this is just a security cheat sheet to show you the ports that you need to have open when you're talking about security on the head node and then on the worker nodes, and limiting access, controlling the API, just on and on. I don't want to dive off into this too much. I just want you to understand that there are things out there that can assist you and so forth. Next up, all right. So we talked about the CVEs. We talked about the OS, which you can look up any OS, by the way, on this website. By the way, you can look up issues that you may have with your Mac or your Windows box or your Unix box. It's all there. All right. And then we talked about Red Hat, And we also talked about Kubernetes. So now let's get into the other side of security. So here I found this article: rich families skimp when it comes to cybersecurity, and it could cost them millions. So we talked about cybersecurity really to me more on the you are the worker and doing the and looking at security vulnerabilities, and you're doing like security. Maybe you're not the owner of a company, but so let's flip it now. Flipping it now, let's say you are working with say a finance group, or you're working with a you're working for a bank or whatever the case may be, or something like that. That's also security of what we call family offices, right? So advisors and so forth. So I'm gonna read through this real quickly. It says more than one third of family office had at least one cybersecurity attack, right? Firms that serve the wealthy spend too little to fend off emails and ransomware, right? And it says insider spoke to EY about why the rich skimp on security and how they can protect themselves. Now, I'm gonna give you the other answer. Most people don't care about security until they have to care about security. And when I say that, is if it is doing an audit or they seen somebody out there get hacked, that's when people start caring about security. But for the most part, security is normally an afterthought. Why? Because most of the time people like security doesn't drive the bottom line, right? But security can drive the bottom line if your information get leaked or if your code gets leaked. Security can drive that bottom line. All right. So when it comes to fending off hackers and other cyber threats, the world richest people can be surprisingly stingy. Many set up family office to manage their affairs, with these firms ranging from hedge fund esque vehicles with chief investment officers to small operations with a few employees who handle the bill pay. Analysis of North American families by Camden Wealth found that on average, offices held about 2 billion in assets, but only spent $48,000 on cybersecurity. Right. So when I see that, I hope you think how I think: opportunity. You should be thinking like, okay, how can we help these family offices secure their emails, their secure everything, right? The networks, the whole nine. All right. That's what I see. That's just me. That's what I see. All right. It says more than one third of North American families experienced at least one cyber attack in the past 12 months. But despite having financial resources, many family offices are reluctant to beef up their cybersecurity because the return on investment is unclear until it's too late. Just like I said, it is the afterthought. It is always the afterthought. It does not drive the ROI that people are looking for until they get attacked. Somebody siphon off a couple of million, and now everybody's like, "Oh, my love, my darling." And that's what happens. Everybody get afraid. Oh, but you should have thought about that before, right? You should have been doing cybersecurity training prior to that, right? It comes down to three problems, said Bobby Stover. Who leads the family office and the enterprise services at Ernest Young? When it comes to cybersecurity, family office principals are cheap, uneducated, and don't want to deal with it. I'm gonna repeat it again. They cheap, uneducated, and don't want to deal with it. But you managing $2 billion under investment under AUM, assets under management, but you don't want to secure your stuff. Compliance is always one of the biggest challenges when we're talking about fine. When I look at stuff across about building companies and finance and building funds, the last thing I ever hear is, how do you secure that? How do you make sure that that person doesn't siphon off the money? How do you make sure that that person doesn't have a back door in to do X, Y, Z? I never hear these conversations. And that's just honest truth. Why family offices are so vulnerable? Like the rest of us, the rich have gadgets like Amazon Alexis spewing out all the stuff, routers, iPads, smart TVs, connect to Wi Fi, and pose security risks. The problem is compounded when you consider several generations of families across multiple properties, jets, and yachts, according to Dave Berg, who leads cybersecurity consulting at EY Americas. So, EY Americas. Let's go over here and grab them real quick. EY Americas. Here we go right here. Ernest and Young. So you got Ernest and Young, and you probably more than likely have Moss Adams, big companies that go in and help these businesses like that secure their stuff. But again, they cheap. They only got a budget of 50,000 to secure their stuff, right? It says the accounting giant helps process cyber insurance policies. Ooh, back to insurance, 300, 500K earners. Remember I talked about that insurance stuff? Here we go. Here we go. All right. So process cyber insurance policy claims assesses risk, and in partnership with tech firms like Microsoft, CrowdStrike helps family office develop response plans to cyber threats. Because if you lose my $2 billion, or if you lose 100 million of mine, and you supposed to be managing it, and it gets siphoned off, what you gonna do? You need to give me my money back. I need run me my coins. Run me my coins, right? All right. A common mistake principals make is assuming someone else is taking care of these seemingly trivial tasks. According to Stover, families are porous, and the number of electronic devices and vendors that they have now makes them even more porous. One of the most common hacks is email. In the compromise, and we're gonna talk about this. I got a good one for you today. Is email compromise, in which someone impersonates a family member via email and requests that the family office to send a wire transfer. The money is lost before the breach is discovered. Another common attack known as ransomware is when someone infiltrates the family office's servers and threaten to expose personal data or block access to it until the family pays up. There are many ways to prepare for cyber attacks, such as penetration testing, pen tests, usually conducted by a third party, assesses a company's security by attempting a hack. They cost anywhere from $25,000 to $65,000 and so forth. But the price of a hack can be far worse. One survey found an incident that cost a family office more than $10 million. In one instance, according to J.P. Morgan in a white paper, we need to read that white paper. A family office paid a ransom of $500,000 before being locked out of all its servers for 10 days. You get locked out your money for 10 days. You got somebody over here, you locked out for 10 days. I'm just showing you where the opportunities at. It's up to you to drive and create companies and leverage and so forth and so on, right? It's just another place to look at for jobs when it comes to cyber. And also prevention is worth a pound of cure. Pen testing is just one of the one measure family office can take to fend off threats. The first step is basic education in cybersecurity for both the family members and the staff. Employees can make surprisingly simple mistakes like writing passwords down on a sheet of paper kept in the office. Many principals feel that their staff should be educated rather than themselves or their families, he said. But the families can create problems. For instance, a Gen Z heir post on Instagram on the family yacht and tag their location. Stover add that reviewing security protocols and taking inventory of all electronic devices for a few preemptive measures that can lower the chances of cyber attacks. The family offices should have incident response plans, and if you don't know what those are, we'll have to do a deeper dive on that next week. I have a book we could do a dive on. The faster a family can identify cybersecurity breach, the more likely the attack will result in significant losses. If you don't have an incident response plan, by the time you pick up the phone and call Ernest and Young, and I can get Dave on the phone with you to figure out what happened, it's probably too late, right? Probably too late. All right, next up. Let's not talk about that one just yet. Let's talk about this one. My phone, my credit card, my hacker, and me. Verizon, Chase, and the police. They were all useless when my identity got hacked. The Psycho Bunny came to the rescue. All right, so let's talk about it. After gaining control of my phone, a hacker ripped me off for $10,000. The scam turned out to be brilliant and terrifying. Right? This is a whole other side of cyber. Now, I talked about the vulnerabilities. We talked about where you can find those at. We talked about um, operating system vulnerabilities. Now, let's talk about it's already done, and let's talk about how they get hacked. Now we got to do. Now we backpedaling and trying to figure out what preventive measures. We talked about family offices and things that they could do. Right. So now let's look at this. It was a Friday in July when I first noticed something seemed off. I was spending some time with my family on a gorgeous summer day, swimming and drinking beer and ignoring my phone as much as possible. When I finally checked, my notifications had two alerts from Verizon. Both contain authorization codes, the kind of security measure they take when you make changes to your account. There was a receipt from Verizon for $0 and a message thanking me for activating my new device. I immediately checked my Verizon account, but nothing seemed amiss. The receipt seemed like a glitch, as if Verizon had belatedly billed me for the phone, which I activated 4 months prior. In hindsight, I should have been more suspicious. I should have called Verizon right away. But why would I want to spend a day on customer service hell and when I could just spend it on the boat? I'm with him or her. I want to be on the boat. We'll get to that. I don't even have good reception out here anyway. The next morning, though, something else seemed strange. When I went to send a text, I realized I didn't have service. I tried flipping cell service on and off, for starting my phone, nothing. I couldn't text and I couldn't make calls. I asked my fiance to check for a local Verizon outage, but nothing turned up. I wondered whether maybe I was just in a dead zone, but I'd never had this problem before. And when I started to feel that slowly dawning sense of dread, right? A few days earlier, my colleague Rob Price had published a terrifying story about hackers who waged a campaign of harassment and intimidation to steal Instagram handles and other coveted usernames on social media. Tucked into that story was a phrase I hadn't heard before, a type of hack I had to look up: SIM swapping. In a SIM swap, the hacker doesn't need to physically steal your SIM card. The thing in your phone that identifies it as your phone, they just pretend to be you and persuade a employee at your telecom provider to activate a new SIM card for them using your phone number. Once that happens, your phone immediately loses service, and the hacker now uses your number to wreak havoc on your life. They can send messages to other pretending to be you, intercept texts from your bank, and even reset your passwords to lock out your own accounts, right? SIM swapping hasn't been around long. It started back in 2018 as a way for gamers to steal other people's cryptocurrency, which is pretty easy to do once you have full access to someone's phone. But now experts say the crime has become more pervasive and far more organized. In 2021, SIM swaps robbed victims of more than $68 million. That's $58 million more than the what we just saw with the family office, right? You could think these people, as petty thieves, says Allison Nixon, the chief researcher officer at Unit 221B. I want to say 227 cybersecurity firm. But after 2018, these petty thieves have become millionaires, right? I borrowed a phone and called Verizon and confirmed I'd been SIM swapped while I was vacationing in New York. More than 4 hours away, the hacker had shown up at Verizon store in Columbus, Ohio, pretending that they were me, complete with a fake ID. They told the store employee their phone had been destroyed and asked to use my phone number to activate an older iPhone they had brought with them. I remembered the strange zero receipt I had gotten the day before and checked the store address at the bottom. Sure enough, it was from Verizon in Columbus, in the Columbus area. I was floored by how easily someone could steal my phone. Surely it must have been a major screw up on the part of the store employee. But when I spoke with higher ups at Verizon, they explained that actually their device activation process had worked precisely the way it was supposed to. When two-factor authentication isn't possible, like when a phone has been lost, stolen, or destroyed, an ID would just suffice. All the hacker needed was knowledge of a glaring loophole in Verizon security, a phony piece of plastic, and a little, I guess, shuspa, right? Verizon immediately deactivated the phone that belonged to the hacker and reinstated mine, but the employee I talked to warned me that this is probably just the beginning of the scam. It turned out he was right. Once the hacker had control of my phone, they didn't waste much time. They left Verizon store and went to the nearby Apple store where they used my Chase card and spent $6,370. They they drove to a mall across town at the shop to shop at Gucci, where they had made two separate transactions totaling 29.56. They finished a clothing store called Psycho Bunny where they spent $452. All told, they racked up $10,000 in purchases on my card in just a few hours. Now I don't know why that card wasn't going off when they was making those purchases, because my card would have been going off. My card would have been like, decline. It's over 300. Decline. Is this you? Is this you? No, decline. Right. The next morning, perhaps testing their luck, they tried to make another purchase at Best Buy, but this was after I had spoken to Verizon and locked my card. So they just opened up a Best Buy card in my name instead. Oh, let me just get a card then. No, I don't know what's going on. Still, something about all the transactions kept bugging me. I noticed that the hacker never logged into my Chase account or my social media account. They just racked up charges on my card. I couldn't figure out why they needed my phone number to in the first place. When I scoured my text log, I realized they were Chase, Chase Chase, aware that I don't typically spend $10,000 in a single afternoon. Sent fraud alerts text each time the hacker tried to make a big purchase. I could see in my text log that each time a fraud alert came in, the hacker used my phone to respond, allowing the charges to go through. Correct. Do you accept these charges? Yes or no? The mystery was fairly easy to solve, but there was something else I couldn't figure out. How did the hacker make so many purchases on my card in the first place? I could see my account that the charges had occurred in at physical stores, not online. The hacker never logged into my iCloud account to set up Apple Pay, and my credit card had been safely tucked into my wallet the entire time. I decided to call each of the stores where the hacker went shopping to try to figure out what happened. I tried Gucci first. A representative at a centralized switchboard informed me that Gucci doesn't even have telephone numbers for individual retail locations, and that the only way to learn more about how the purchase was made would be to visit the store. Given that I was back home in New York, more than 14 hours away, I decided to try my luck at Apple. Apple was equally unhelpful. A store employee informed me that unless I knew exactly which items had been purchased, there was no way he could look up the information about the transaction, even though I knew the total amount spent, the card number, the date, the time of the purchases. The employee said there was another option. He'd be able to hand over the full receipt, no problem, as long as the police requested it from Apple's legal department. I decided to give it one last shot with Psycho Bunny, a menswear retailer whose logo is rabbit skull and bones. A helpful store manager looked in the store system and confirmed that yes, someone who said their name was Avery H had made a purchase using my card. The shopper had even supplied a phone number with one digit off from mine, the manager said. Unfortunately, that was the extent of the information. Disheartening, I hung up. I wasn't any closer to finding out how the thief got hold of my card. Then, about 15 minutes later, my phone rang. It was the store manager calling back. She heard the team had decided to go through the security footage from that day a purchase was made, and they found the footage of the thief standing in the store counter. She asked me to describe what I look like. Yeah, the manager said that person I'm looking at here is basically the exact opposite of you. The thief was a woman, but she was wearing a hat and a face mask when she made the purchase. I asked the store manager whether she was able to see the thief paid for the items. They used a physical credit card, she told me. The manager seemed game to hand over the footage of the thief in action. So I called the Columbus Police Department, decided to present this new evidence. I had already filled the police report, 23 steps I had taken, including submitting a claim to the FBI Internet Crime Center and freezing my credits to lock down my life and tied up frayed ends of my identity. But when I spoke to the officer in the Columbus Fraud Squad, he asked me whether my money had been stolen from a bank account or whether my credit card company was holding me liable for the 10,000. No, I told him. Chase agreed to reverse all the charges. The officer was quiet for a bit. He said, "Yeah," he said, "we're not going to investigate that. The squad that which has only 5 officers gets 7,000 reports of fraud a year. If I hadn't lost my money, the officer told me it wasn't worth their time." As it turned out, I had spoken too soon. A few weeks later, I got a letter from Chase Fraud Department. "We changed our minds," it said. "We don't believe you that these charges were fraudulent. We're holding you responsible for paying them." Suddenly, I was saddled with $9,700 on my credit card, 3 weeks shy of my wedding. My card was nearly maxed out and beginning to collect interest. I pleaded with Chase to reverse this reversal, but they told me they thought I was lying for two reasons. One, because I had sent because because they had sent me fraud alerts when the purchases were made, and I had approved them. But it was the thief, not me, I protested. And two, because the physical credit card had been used to make the purchases, even though I was still in possession of my card. When I pointed out that the thief could be seen as Psycho Bunny security footage taping a physical card on the kiosk, the Chase representative said it would have been impossible for someone to duplicate a microchip embedded in a card. The only way Chase would agree to remove the charges, she said, was if I could provide to them a documentation that I had been SIM swapped, either an official police report or a letter from Verizon confirming that my phone number had been hijacked. The police had already told me it would take weeks for my report to work its way through the system. I don't know why. This is why I think AI comes into play. No one has time for that because you're still running up the bill, right? So in what my third call to Verizon, I begged the company to provide me with documentation of fraud, which it had already acknowledged took place. But after I spent an hour and a half on the phone being bounced around to 5 different departments, Verizon representative told me they couldn't provide me with anything in writing and confirmed that I could that confirmed that I had been SIM swapped. At that point, she said it's a legal issue. Then out of the blue, I got a lucky break. After Chase told me I had been held responsible, I had begged them to reopen my fraud case and check again. I sent them a folder with every shred of evidence I had. There was a screenshot of the receipt when the hacker activated my phone in Columbus, hundreds of miles away where I was at the time. There was documentation that I had submitted to the police, the FBI, the Federal Trade Commission, and the Federal Communication Commissions Communications Commission, and there was a paper trail providing that I had been forced to lock my credit file with major credit reporting agencies. My begging must have worked because Chase assigned a new investigator to look at my case. A few days after I was turned away by Verizon. He gave me a call. He found a few things first investigator had missed. For starters, after the hacker tried to make the first purchase on my card, Chase issued a fraud alert The hacker called Chase from my phone number, and they said they were me and asked me to allow their purchases. I wonder if they knew all their security answers too. When you know how when you call a customer service it says this call may be monitored, well, they're not lying. Chase had a recording of the call. The fraud investigator had listened to the recording and had called me to check whether it was the same voice. While he wouldn't give much detail, he said clearly it wasn't me who had approved the purchase. But there was another thing that struck him strange. Typically, when your credit card is about to expire, as mine was, the bank sends you a new card a few weeks ahead of time. Chase investigator told me when people get new card, they'll follow standard uh, pattern of behavior. They immediately stop using the old card and switch to the new one. But I hadn't done that. I was still using my old card. At this point in our conversation, I could almost hear my heart start beating louder. Here's the thing I told him. I never received the card with the new expiration date. The investigator explained that the purchases in Columbus were made with using the new expiration card. Meanwhile, on the same day, I had used my old card to buy dinner in New York. The mystery of the credit card was solved. The hacker had gotten their hands on my new card, which is why the purchases looked legit. Between the evidence of the card and the voice recording of the hacker, it was enough to convince Chase to change his mind and permanently reverse the charges. And there's more to it. I'm not going to read all of that. It's a longer story, but you get the gist. There's more to this story as well too. I'll finish this off another time. I want you to have that story though. Here's another one. Fintech has a fraud problem, and the onus is on you to figure it out. When it comes to fintech, there's a problem. We're still taking nominations of the 2023 Rising Star, blah, 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 woo, woo. Let me see if they got it here. Fintech's fraud misfortune. Move fast and break things, right? Let me go down here and see. Here it is. Fintech has undeniably led improvements in how people save, invest, and transfer money. However, one of the industry's greatest strengths, the speed at which it can offer users these services, is its greatest weakness. Streamlining onboarding process and previously bogged customers down in is also opening fintechs up to letting criminals into their ecosystem. All right. There's no way to go through and they're not moving fast. They're offering, like I said, they're offering services just like other ones, but there's no way to go back and say X, Y, and Z in terms of what's the word I'm looking for? They're not putting security first, so therefore the security lags behind. Then and the offering is already done. The merchandise is stolen and gone. Money is out of here, and then you're over with. You look pretty greasy. I don't know why he's showing up on my screen like that. All right, so let me see. Let's get rid of this. We'll talk about this next week. But I did want to hold on. I got some other ones I want to mention, but I do want to mention this. Um, I think everyone saw this security firm Microsoft was laying out security layoffs in the internal email, but this is huge news right here. Not that one. Is it not up here? I'll have it up here. It's not here. But this is huge. Hmm. Lockheed Martin buying Boeing is huge. That is huge. From what we know about Boeing, what we know about that, right? Questions about long-term future have kept aviation analysts busy while before the pandemic, problems with the development of the 777X and grounding 737, whatever, right? But Boeing being bought by Lockheed Martin, we talking billions. We talking billions. And you talking about government contract. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody protest this from a security standpoint, from a cornering the market standpoint. I wouldn't be surprised, right? The size of Lockheed and Boeing would suggest that a merger would be unlikely to get approval by the U.S. Department of Justice, for the reason it would seem easier for Lockheed to only absorb Boeing's defense, space, and security division. However, it seems that discussions between the two companies involve Boeing in an entirety. In a merger, Lockheed will be taking over Boeing, but Boeing name would still survive in the process, right? But if they did buy them, we're not just talking about government contracts. We're not just talking about the planes. We're talking about space. We're talking about space and security. That's huge. And I just wanted to make sure I got this out here for cybersecurity Sundays, right? Let me see. Let me look at this up. Lockheed Martin buying Boeing billions. Look what they're averaging. Lockheed wins the bill for 200 billion. That's 2019. We'll go ahead tools. Let's go in the past week. Let's see. Yeah, because they're investing in space. And you can see these Lockheed Martin up to 4.5 billion in missiles. So you can imagine what this is going to be like for buying Boeing. What's Boeing net worth? Let me look. Boeing net worth. They got them estimated as. They got them estimated as 128.59 billion. 128.59 billion. If Boeing goes to buy them, they're probably going to have to try to get them um, at probably three times the amount. So we can go ahead and say, let's say 130 times three, about, we're talking about half a trillion, because they got to pay everybody. They got to break everybody off. Got to break everybody off, right? So that's it for Cybersecurity Sundays. I have a whole lot more, as you can see. But I wanted to get this information out to you. I want you to absorb this. Think about creating a business. Think about consulting. Think about different ways you can get into cybersecurity from a tech perspective, and as well too. Remember, bet on yourself. Right? Bet on yourself. All right. It's been real, y'all. Y'all be safe and have a good night.